Brandon Davis, CEO of Swan Energy.
Imran Khan, Swan Energy.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here this week on Mining Money, a segment where we like to find good opportunities out in the marketplace as well as some good places to invest in the market as well because, well, we're all trying to mine money these days, and the mining sector seems to be one of the most safest places, really. I know it's volatile in its history, but at the end of the day, it seems to be the place that adds jobs, and it seems to be the place that still is what makes the economy work and go around. And one of the news stories that happened recently is the California blackouts, and that was a very good wake-up call about how a lot of the wind and the solar isn't really quite at the point that we need it to be for our modern civilization, and all of a sudden now they got to rely back on some fossil fuels. Germany, after their experiment, they had to fire up the coal plants again. So there's a lot of these different things that are happening out there in this green movement. So that's holding some brakes on. And then you take a look at what's going on in just the oil and gas sector, that so much is what we're needing. You know, I went to Imran, you're in restaurants. So I went to a restaurant the other day, and pretty soon they started serving me in individual little plastic cups. And I noticed, okay, now the glassware is going away for individual plastics. And we talked a few weeks ago about the PPE equipment, that sort of thing. So everywhere I kind of look around, I just don't see the oil and gas sector really going anywhere. I see it kind of shifting a little bit and reshaping and maybe adapting, but now is the time where I wanted to bring the two of you on to talk about investing in yourself, because so many people out there, you know, we talked about some laid off workers rolling their 401k into some programs that you guys have for some well sharing, and that's an option for some people. We talked before about investing in just flat out wells, take some cash and do that, and we mentioned that before. And now how about, like, you know, some people just want to invest in themselves. And if they're out of the oil and gas industry, but that's their background, boy, that's really a good place to start with what you know and what you understand. And that way you can have a little more confidence and a little bit more understanding on an investment as opposed to just giving it to someone and hoping it works out. Okay, now that I've just taken the last 20 minutes to intro our two special guests today, I do apologize, but I just wanted to lay the context a little bit, because really is, you know, part of investing is understanding what you know and what you believe in, and that really kind of helps out. But let's talk about some of those opportunities out there. And if you guys wanted to comment on that investing in yourself kind of just attribute in the world of investing, you certainly can. So either one, go ahead and start off.
Well, I believe that if someone has the want to, they should invest in themselves and go start their own opportunity, whatever it may be. And yes, use the skill set you have to do so, and then learn as you go on the rest of it. There's nothing super complicated about getting in the oil and gas business. I believe anyone can do it. Some businesses take a lot of capital up front. You can get into the oil and gas business with very little capital up front. There's a lot of opportunities to do that. And it's exciting to me to think about just the industry that's been hardest hit. Next, there's the hardest hit industry from COVID-19 is hospitality. Number two is basically oil and gas, mining and drilling. And the reality is that there have been a lot of jobs lost. They're hyper-focused right now on specific areas that work at this price point very well, kind of like we were in 2016. And we'll see what comes of it, but it's traditional oil and gas fields. There's a lot of international investors right now just wanting out. We bought a group of assets earlier this year that was exactly that scenario, where they literally had spent, I would say, $70 million using consultants, and they spent about half that drilling and about half of it on consultants that didn't do a very good job for them except spend their money. But they got to a point they wanted out, so we picked up the assets for literally a drop in the bucket, and we're getting ready to start expanding on those. But there's lots of those opportunities right now. From my understanding, most money in the oil and gas space from Asia is getting out. So we'll see how that goes on a forward basis. but it's creating a lot of opportunities for individuals that understand completions and understand how wells work to start their own companies. I mean, I implore anybody to do that. It's exciting, it's fun, and you can kind of write your own check at some point, but you have to be willing to take the risk. And that risk is no different than if you invest in wells. The difference is you're in the middle of it, your involvement, your brain is part of the decision-making process every day. Our opportunities have the same kind of situation where people are in control and tell us what to do. Essentially, we come up with ideas and then we vet them through our investor base, our partner base. So it's very similar in that regard. But again, it's not a high level of entry from a cash position. Knowledge base, there's lots of people out there that know plenty about oil and gas to be able to get out there and get started. That'd be awesome to see this resurgence of the independent oil and gas companies because of all of this cutting and craziness that we're dealing with.
I think that's a great point. And if you think about what America's about, I mean, the backbone of America is based on small business. Overall, it's about people taking the opportunity and chances on themselves and making that happen. From an oil and gas perspective, I actually used to teach at a local college here, some different oil and gas related classes, and there's a lot of folks that are very interested in being able to learn a lot of opportunities out there. If you are interested in finding out and learning about those items, you definitely can. For us, it just is a great time to be able to learn about this industry, and I think there's many industries out there that have some great opportunities right now. I don't know about real estate because it seems in Houston at least it's really high, but from an oil and gas perspective, having hit the bottom not too long ago, it really has a big potential. We're seeing natural gas starting to pick back up again. We're seeing oil obviously is very steady in the low 40s, which is a great number right now considering where we're at. A lot of the technologies that are been developed over the last 10 years have just gotten better, and we're taking advantage of a lot of that. A lot of the horizontal drilling that goes on, and the methods to be able to get into the right reservoirs. There's lots of good technologies like geosteer that's come a long way in the last 10, 15 years that allow you to be able to stay within a zone that you're drilled into. So I think those types of things are important to be able to understand. Obviously these days everyone Googles everything, so there's plenty of places if you're looking to be able to invest in yourself and figure things out. You don't even have to go to school. You can do a lot of that on your own, and obviously there's a lot of different resources available out there for you to be able to look into. And of course, we've got a lot of different investments in those areas too, and we're always willing to take a phone call or get an email and help anybody who needs to in that space and to better understand the investments.
It's interesting that the startups are starting to percolate more and more, and the international dollars are starting to shift out and that sort of things. That's really good news, honestly, because if that is starting to have the momentum in the marketplace, then there's going to be some good activity that's going to happen in the future. I think one of the biggest things that people worry about is risk management. And, last week we talked quite a bit about, the risk involved with investing and that sort of thing, but that's with any investment. And the thing that I really like about an oil and gas investment, and I'm going to talk a little bit about risk management here because this is a different perspective that a lot of people do not understand, especially if you want a long-term investment or something that is solid. Let's just say solid. Imran, you have a restaurant, right?
I do.
Okay, so when the weekend happens and, you're shut down because of COVID and the government won't allow anybody to open and that sort of thing, those days are gone. And if you don't cash flow your $5,000 a night or $10,000 a night or $1,000 a night or whatever the budget numbers are, well, that's gone. In oil and gas, that commodity, that resource ain't going anywhere. So it's like there's a set dollar to each one of those things, whereas in a lot of other places, time is really the biggest enemy versus regulation. But that's one of the securities and one of the safe sides of risk management when it comes to oil and gas is when that commodity or that resource is discovered, you can pretty much put a pretty good price on it or put a pro forma at least on it, a balance sheet on it. Does that make sense, guys? Am I talking crazy? Do I not get this industry like I thought I did?
No, it makes sense, but I think the reserves are like anything else. You want to be able to pull up as much of it as you can, as quickly as you can, to be able to take advantage of it in current markets. And yeah, you're not wrong about the risk part of it too, right? In order for you to be able to have the right risk, you need to have the appropriate upside, right? So if you're taking the risk, you need to be able to get something out of it. And I believe that, again, the technology and the opportunity right now with where numbers are still in the upward trending direction, it's a time to be able to get in within the market, right? I think that's, and again, that doesn't have to deal with just oil and gas, just in general. I think folks are hesitant to be able to get in. It's great to see that, foreign investment is lower now, and more of the American investments are getting into our own lands and our own different types of investment tools out there. I think overall you need to just be able to understand that and move forward from that standpoint.
Taking a look at some of the diversity involved with investing, and when I hear startups and I start hearing about some foreign money going back, and it just I see the cycle happening again. And Brandon, if you wouldn't mind, take a second to talk about some of the investing that's been happening in your past, because, first of all, people like to know about investing and et cetera. And, you've got your fingers in a lot of different areas, whether it be natural gas or oil or gold mines, you don't have to name your portfolio or name all of them, but, I always like to get a gold mine update. So we'll start with that. But, when somebody's trying to figure out how to, what's that?
I said over the years I've done a lot of different things.
Yeah, and just kind of let somebody know how they get started on something like that, because it does springboard fast. In one direction or the other. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
that's the way it works.
Hey, man.
It all comes down to your confidence and your understanding of what you're getting into, and understanding the risk and the reward, and trying. The most important thing is to know all of the negative things that can happen, so you can make sure you're comfortable with that. Because the things that I've gotten into, the situations that I have dealt with, and look, I'm just going to say, I've been in the oil and gas business for 13 years. I've also invested into nutrition companies, NASCAR race teams, local dirt track race teams, gold mining, trucking, disposal wells, car dealerships, and I'm sure I'm missing several things. I used to look at startups and look at them every day, which we did participate in some and didn't participate in some. But at the end of the day, the thing that has made it easier as I've gotten older and understand things a little better is that not only do you have to understand the big risk, you have to understand all the risk in what you're getting into. And I say all known risk, and those today, it's a lot easier to find them than it used to be with the internet and all of the sources and searches and data out there. But the best way to do it is talk to someone who has succeeded and someone who has failed in that industry to get the gist of what makes it click. And that's how I go into anything, is I try to find someone that's succeeded and talk to them, try to find someone that's failed and talk to them. So you get the both sides of the coin, not just the rosy, it's all going to work side, because it's never like that. It doesn't matter how good a plan is, it's going to change. And it doesn't matter how amazing an opportunity looks, it's going to be hard. And they all are. And it's the guy that fights through, sticks with it, and doesn't quit that makes it. Harold Hamm's a good example. I mean, that guy came from nothing to have what he has today. It's just an amazing story. And so there's lots of those in this industry and other industries. And I just it's exciting to me to think about it like other people going out and doing that. It could be really cool.
Well, you just figured out my secret sauce that I failed so much in life. I have to bring experts like you on that just succeed all the time. It's a good balance of my show. So you just figured out my program, man. You know, that's why you guys are.
For every success I have had, Jason, I've had about 24 failures before or after or around it. So I don't know. It's literally not how many times you win. It's how many times you get back up after you get knocked down. That's it. And period.
Yeah, I tell people it's all about momentum. And if you're moving backwards, at least you're moving, man, because you got to move ahead. You got to keep trying to move ahead. But when you stand still, that's the fear. That's the paralyzation. That's when problems happen. That's how we find ourselves in what we're dealing with today. That's how, we're going to places. And I mean, I went to 3 different restaurants last night that I didn't go into because they had some COVID regulations. And, I'm visiting from a place from out of town, so I don't want to take the time to figure everything out. So I'm just looking for something easy. And there's problems there. But, hey, Brandon, I did want to ask you, I'm sorry to opine and sidebar there. I do that from time to time. But I did want to ask you, you mentioned some pretty cool stuff, like gold mine and NASCAR. I didn't know you invested in NASCAR. And, each one of those has their own little pros and cons and their positives and their negatives. And, like for me, I would think NASCAR has just kind of got some sex appeal and it's pretty cool. And at the same time, it's probably got a lot of hidden costs you never thought of, from ball bearings to, wax, who knows, and diva drivers. But that's a different story. But what's the one thing that really sticks out to you about oil and gas when it comes to risk management, and the thing that, you really either learned, underestimated, or think that somebody should know going into oil and gas that's really going to help them and from an investment side? I hope that question makes sense.
It does. The first thing that I discovered after drilling a lot of dry holes is that you drill wells where there are lots of wells, not in areas that don't have them. And I think that's probably pretty commonplace, especially these days with all the unconventional drilling going on in areas that have been drilled for 30, 40, 50 years. But back when I got into the business, that's not what everyone did. You found a unique opportunity that had ridiculous upside and went and drilled it. And sometimes most of the time it didn't work. I mean, that was just the way it was. And when we went in, started drilling wells and or acquiring assets in areas that had 5 to 12 potentially productive pay zones in them, we stopped having failures on the drilling side, and then it was a production thing. So then it was how much oil and gas can we get out of the well? And sometimes that worked really well, and sometimes it didn't. And that I still haven't figured out which ones to pick and which ones not to, because you really don't know until you go do the work. I'm currently participating in a project in an area where there are vertical wells that have produced 1 million plus barrels. Vertical wells in the same formation, and we have a horizontal well. And the best horizontal well we can find in the area in the same formation, and we found wells that did 800,000 barrels and 500,000 vertical. But the best horizontal well in the area in the same formation is 291,000 barrels. And why? Who knows? The IP was lower on that well than the wells that produced 4 or 5 to 1 million barrels in a vertical well. So I don't understand all that. And they're not next to each other, so it's not an obvious thing. And that's the fun of the business, is that there are a lot of unknowns. But the reason that I think that anyone that has worked in oil and gas should be able to get into business, and really anyone should be able to, is it's not that big of an entry point. You can find opportunities in oil and gas for a few $1,000s that you could turn into millions of dollars if you know how. And that know-how is what a lot of people that don't have jobs right now have. So, I'll
give you an example. My little company, and listen, we're not a multi-million-dollar company by any stretch of the imagination, but it has allowed me to be a full-time father, a very engaged father, pay my bills and go on a few trips a year and this and that, and, live an above average lifestyle. And I started with about $8,000. Honest to God, I bought a food truck, sight unseen off Craigslist, spent $1,000 on recording equipment, and I did a food truck out in the Bakken for a year or about 6 months where we did our radio show. So we had Harold Ham come by and he sat at our food truck and did a radio program, and they didn't even have internet in the Bakken yet. They didn't even have Wi-Fi. They didn't even have Cat 5 yet. It was just awful. We were so far ahead of ourselves, but to prove your point, my opinion, and this is me because I've only been in this industry for less than 10 years, okay, since 2012 really. I have never seen an industry that has allowed somebody to be so quick and nimble to shift their dollars and figure out ways to reinvest within their original intentional investment in order to keep nimble, like the oil and gas industry. And that sentence may not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but I know it resonates to a lot of people too.
It's absolutely a fact. And $8,000, I mean, for your story is awesome. There's so many people out there that I've ran into that have businesses that do well, that have similar stories where they took their last 25 grand and, turned it into a business as they sold 5 or 10 years later for $30-40 million. It happens every day, and it's possible every day. And it just takes the commitment. I mean, you can't do it part-time. You can't do it while you're doing another job. You have to go for it. If you're going to go into business for yourself, I'd say the biggest lesson that I've learned over the years from people that I've seen that have failed and succeeded is that you have to absolutely go in with everything you've got. And if you go in with any less, you're going to fail, so don't bother.
Imran, let's shift over to you because I interrupted. And if you'd like to continue on that thought you had 20 minutes ago when I interrupted you, feel free. But I did want...
No, not at all. The funny thing is you kind of reiterated the same point. So no real loss there. Overall, it's just about courage and confidence, right? When you really think about these types of things, these aren't things that are taught in school. These are things that you either have or you don't. And you need to be able to, if you don't have it, you need to be able to come up with it somehow if you want to be able to take advantage of the times, right? Research is easy to be able to do. You can be able to go out and network with different folks. It's not that hard to do. You need to build a better understanding of whatever that topic is. And in our case, it's oil and gas. So, and there's lots of lessons learned, right? I mean, you got to be able to take the lessons learned as Brandon was pointing out right now, just because you drill a dry well the first time around doesn't mean that you're always going to be doing that. It's going to be, you're going to have to develop on that and understand the lessons learned around it and build from it. Right? I think that's really the key there. And I think if you can have a method to your madness around that, that's really what's gonna make you successful in the long term.
One of the things I like to do is get a little existential at times. And Imran, I wanted to ask you the same question I asked Brandon. Your background's a little bit different. I'm not sure about your portfolio, but I do know that you're in the restaurant business and you've had restaurants. And you and I have joked in the past about how that's one of the riskiest ones out there. I mean, that's, up there with oil and gas. And what's the other? I forgot the other one that we talked. Was it real estate? The other risky one. You're in another one. Anyway, you're in another risky one too.
No, honestly, if I tell you, Jason, just background-wise of myself and the investments that I've made, I've owned things from convenience stores to jewelry stores in the mall to all sorts of different things. So, and it's, that's really how, that's how I've made my living for a while. Yeah, yes, I am an engineer, but always had that side hustle idea going on in my mind, right? To where this isn't what I want to be able to do, is just work for someone from 9 to 5.
Ironically,
right? If you want to really do it, you need to come out of the shell and come out and do it, right?
I was going to say, ironically, the jewelry store in the mall sounds like about the safest investment I've heard yet. But anyway, it's
not a great investment, but it's a great way to be able to survive and raise a family, right? I mean, you have to do what you have to do to make things happen. And yeah, I think I started my first business when I was 16 and I got audited the first year. So just to kind of give you an idea, I mean, it literally, so you learn early, you learn fast. That's the real bottom line. And, I've been fortunate to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars rather than millions of dollars, right? I take that as a big benefit. I know my buddy that I'm sitting next to here has lost millions of dollars. So it's, you know what I mean? Like you take advantage of whatever you can and you learn from it as fast as you can.
Well, but the downside for you is that you only get out of it what you put in. So if I go lose 20 million, That means I was trying to make 200 or 300.
100% agree. 100%.
And and that stings, but it is what it is, and you learn from it. And if you don't learn from it, that's where you have problems.
Agreed.
And that to me is the problem. It's like, if you fail, know why you failed, understand it, learn from it, and then move on, and don't dwell on it, because dwelling doesn't do any good either. And I can sit around and tell stories for days right here on all of the things that I have done that I have lost money on, that everyone else I know that has attempted, has succeeded, and made money at. It's like, sometimes you just don't get in the right situation at the right time. It doesn't work. I mean, that's just the way it is. So failure is just one step closer to success, and it doesn't take many successes to make it. It really doesn't.
Listening to you talk about
fail.
Your background in convenience store, and I thought, boy, if somebody would have invested in a convenience store 10 years ago, they probably had 4 heart attacks by now, because that industry has had to adapt and reinvent their business plan more than me. And I'm in the media, and I've had to do it 4 times in the last 12 years. I can explain just thoroughly how we've had to change our business models. But the convenience store, holy smokes, they had to compete with McDonald's. They've turned into food preparation, because pay at the pump about killed their Snickers. People used to put gas in the car. They'd maybe lose a nickel or break even on the gas. They'd go in and buy a Snickers for twice as much as they should, and everything was fine. Everybody loved it. But as soon as pay at the pump happened, these convenience stores, they went through a decade of trying to figure out how to get people into their store. From some of these people are like little small runnings and little small Dick's Sporting Goods stores and convenience and general stores when you get in there. But that's an example of somebody might have thought investing in a convenience store was really safe. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they had a decade where, they had to really figure out. And I bring up the convenience store, Imran, because you probably understand what I'm talking about, where it seems like now,
100%.
Yeah, they've had to turn into like some sort of high-end quick food operation to get people in the store.
Yeah, you got to do all sorts of stuff in that business to stay around. And there's and I've left that business a long time ago, but there's just a few sharp people that are in that business that have been able to make money on pennies. Basically, that's pretty much what you do in that business. And it's a numbers game, right? You need to be able to have enough stores, as you pointed out. There's a gas station on every corner now, so you're competing against all the other 3 corners of wherever your convenience store is, right? So there's and on top of that, like you said, the Dick's Sporting Goods, the Walmarts, everything else that's around there. So this is one of the reasons why I thought it was a better bet to get into oil and gas. And having seen a lot of other industries, it's you can go bust anytime, but you can do that anywhere. I'd rather do it fast and slow. And I think, as Brandon pointed out, when you're losing 20 million, you're probably looking for 200 million, right? So you just need one of those to be able to hit, and you're doing well.
Well, I sure appreciate you guys coming on here, because what we've been able to explain to people over a few weeks, months or whatever, is that you guys have a diversity in your investments. And the reason we bring you in here is to talk about the oil and gas investments and whether they're valid or not. Because if they're not, you're going to let us know, because you're going to say, go invest in gold, go invest in convenience stores, because that's what you guys are doing. So appreciate the honesty on that. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to let people know how they can contact you. But I do know that in the past you were buying some natural gas leases. So I do want to check in to see if you're buying natural gas leases still. And then also make sure, for that person out there that just wants to know more information, how they can invest, be a part of some of the investments that you guys have going on, or how to invest in the oil and gas industry, we'll give an opportunity to let people know how they can contact you.
SwanEnergyInc.com is our website. There is a lot of information on there. There's also a place that you can fill out requests for information on what we're doing, and you can feel free to do that if you'd like at SwanEnergyInc.com. And otherwise, we're here every day, so we're working. And if somebody contacts us looking for information via our website, we'll reach out and go from there.
I think a great topic today on invest in yourself. I think both Brendan and I and you have basically shared with the listeners how we've invested in ourselves over the years, right? And did whatever we needed to do to kind of make it happen. I think everyone has a story that they've spent time and developed. So I think you just have to be able to take the time, understand it, and do what makes sense to you.
Well,
Jason,
go ahead.
I get a lot of a lot of requests, conversations, information, and it's always based around success and what how did you become successful, or tell me about the greatest opportunity, the greatest deal you ever had, the best deal you've ever had. And that's, for me, that's the last thing I ever want to talk about. Those to me are the exception. The rule is all the times that I've failed and things haven't worked and they haven't gone my way. Those are the conversations that I like to have with people, because it's more of an educational situation. It's kind of like the kid that goes through high school and he's on a great team and he's an all-star and never loses a game, then goes to college and he never loses a game, and then goes into the NFL and gets his ass kicked and then never can overcome that. Pardon my language, but at the end of the day, losing is what makes you stronger, not winning. But it seems like our society tends to only want to lean towards people that succeed all the time. Well, when those people that succeed all the time fail, that's when you see what they're actually made of, because everyone does it. It's just part of the deal.
So you can just reach out to us at swanenergyinc.com. Again, it was swanenergyinc.com. That's the best and easiest way to be able to get in touch with us. There's a contact us area within the site that you can reach out and put your comments and questions in there, and we'll be able to get back with you. There is a phone number on there too, so that way you can reach us from that way too.